This is the Drive-By with Freeway Frank.
How's it going? Episode 13. Wow. I was just thinking, what number is it? It's 13. Here we are. What's happening? Freeway Frank. Welcome to the Drive-By podcast. I have lots to talk about this week. I'm by myself. There's nobody here at my house this week. Nobody's sitting across from me. It's a lonely studio. Lonely. And I thought I'd start off with an account of a story that happened to me over the weekend. We were at some friends' home, get together. Some friends, some guy. No, honestly, this very nice couple that lives in our neighborhood here, and we were invited for a little get together. So we were a bunch of people and went over there. But it was so funny because, everybody was on alert, right? Because there haven't been a lot of get-togethers or parties during the last couple of years. Now everybody's coming out. Everybody's awakening from the last 2 years of this craziness. And so here we were at this nice house party, very small one. And it's funny because about half an hour, 45 minutes in, I asked one of the hosts of the party, who else is coming? So she said, we have this person, this person, this person, and Monica and Chandler. And I was like, Monica and Chandler, as in Monica and Chandler from Friends. Who the hell is Monica and Chandler? And she was like, oh, that's not their real names. It's they have Asian names. We live in a very Asian area of the Montreal area. I have a lot of Asian friends and Asian neighbors. And so she said that's not their real name. But when they come over from China and they're newly arrived and they've been here, whatever, a couple of years or 5-10 years, they are known to change their name to North American names to make it easier for people to pronounce their name. And I said, wait a minute. This happened to me. This happened to me last year. So they're like, what do you mean? And I said, I have my own Monica and Chandler experience. And again, I'm not laughing at the fact they do this. Well, in a way, I do. I am laughing. But I'm not ridiculing them by any means because I think it's kind of cute. But at the same time, the cuteness turns to ridiculousness because of names like Monica and Chandler. And then people are going to say, what? Frank, do they not look like a Monica and Chandler? That's racist. And I was like, no, they don't look like a Monica and Chandler, but they could be Monica and Chandler. Just like, a white guy could be named Tyrone. I mean, it's very possible. Or, an African-American guy could have the name Antonio. So it doesn't really matter. But the point is, last year, I was introduced to one of my neighbors across the street. His name is Ming. And I was introduced to him as Ming, okay? Or he was introduced to me as Ming. And I'm not Ming. I was introduced to him as Frank, of course. And a couple of years ago, when we both moved into this neighborhood, it's a new development at the same time, that was the name he used to introduce himself with, Ming. Now, last year, I had another neighbor move in next door. And he's also Asian, but he's from, born and raised in Canada, speaks fluent English, fluent French, better than I do. And his name is Andrew, and fantastic guy. And so when Ming last year saw me speaking to Andrew, he was kind of coming over. You could tell he wanted me to introduce, each other. So he crossed the street. He comes over and, Ming puts out his hand and Andrew puts out his hand and Andrew says, Andrew. And Ming shakes the hand and says, hi, Alan. And I'm like, well, hang on a second. What? He says, Alan. I'm Alan, Frank. I was like, no, you're not Alan, you're Ming. You told me your name was Ming when we moved in. You've been Ming every single day, every single hour. Because I see him sometimes 5-6 times a day, especially when it's summer and it's nice. Hey, Ming, hey, Ming, hey, Ming. Hey, Frank, hey, Frank, hey, Ming. How did you become Alan? Well, he said, that's my North American name. I go, whoa, hang on a second. What do you mean your North American name? He goes, well, that's the name, I've used, and a lot of people, and then Andrew, my neighbor, explained it to me. He goes, Frank, a lot of people who come over from the mainland will use North American names. So that's the name that he has chosen to use. I said, but wait a minute. He introduced himself. I go, Ming, you introduced yourself. I'm getting upset at this point, right? But not really upset, but bothered, okay? I'm laughing, of course, as I'm watching this. I'm going, I'm looking back and forth like, what's going on here? I'm amused, but I'm not amused. I'm like, Ming, I've known you as Ming for the last 3.5 years. Now, you meet Andrew for the first time, and you've just like that, you've become Alan. He goes, Frank, you could call me Alan. I go, no, I'm not calling you Alan because you introduced yourself as, I go, what's your name on your birth certificate? What's your name? He said, Ming. I go, I'm calling you Ming. I go, if Andrew wants to call you Alan, that's fine. You're Ming to me, always and forever. That's it. We're not changing it. That's what I'm going with, unless you change your name, And I'm not saying that they're not proud of their names. Of course, I'm proud of my name. My name on my birth certificate is Francesco. Very proud of it. But when I was younger, it wasn't as hip. I get it. So I get the whole Monica, Chandler. I get this. Monica, Chandler, Alan, Mary, whatever, Donna. I get it, okay? Because I didn't want to use Francesco either. I only started using the name Francesco when I moved to British Columbia, and I spent a decade there. And I put 2 and 2 together and started to realize women, especially in British Columbia, when they found out, like they saw because on my visa, it's Francesco. On my driver's license, it's Francesco. Everything is Francesco. So many times, they just grab my card or my ID or when I was paying or when they got my license, and I had girlfriends, whatever the case, and they're like, whoa, hang on, who's Francesco? I'm like, I'm Francesco. They're like, your name is Francesco and you don't use it? That's so sexy. So then I made it a point of when, meeting women and getting into new relationships or dating, and this is all pre-Tinder, of course, almost internet. We had the internet, but pre-Facebook, none of that stuff existed. None of it. I think it was ICQ. Was it ICQ? IQC, ICQ, I don't know. Anyway, so that's about it. And I wasn't using any of that stuff to meet women. I was using, my abilities, meaning no computer, just me, like we did back in the old days when you liked someone, you saw them, you went up to them, and you made your attempt, you made your move to get to know the person. And so when they find out my name was Francesco, it was like I said the magic word, Now there's a special place. I know there's a special place that guys apparently have never figured out during the history of humankind. This special place we just don't know. We don't get it. At least I've heard that a couple of times. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. But I realized that you didn't even need to discover the special place. Just say the name Francesco and say it that way, and that's it. It was like craziness. I was going to use the word Niagara Falls, but I think I just did. And that's it. So then I'd make it a point to, even when I was at a nightclub, I'd be like, hi, what's your name? Natasha, yours, Francesco, nice to meet you. And I was like, they would start twitching. So I'm like, I haven't used Francesco. That's it. So I went to Francesco was the go-to name. So I completely, for other reasons, of course, understand how someone might want to use the name Monica, Chandler, Allen. But again, if you introduce yourself, especially to me, with one name, after a while, you can't change it to another name. It just messes me up. It messed me up. It really messed me up. So this past weekend, when I heard Monica and Chandler were coming over, I was like, wait a minute. This exact thing happened to me. Oh, man. I'm sure there's somebody watching or listening to this podcast right now that has experienced this. Maybe not, but let me tell you, if you do, you heard it here first, and you'll understand. You'll understand much, much quicker than I did when that craziness was happening in front of me last summer. I'm not going to lie, I've been feeling a little down. I've been questioning things, and I'm sure a lot of people have been doing the same. I've been questioning things for the last couple of weeks because I started, and we do this as human beings, I started questioning myself. Looking back at the last 2 years, I'm confident that what I've said publicly, privately, has been consistent. And I truly believe in the stance or opinions that I've delivered either on social media or, as I said, in person with people. And I stand by everything I've said. Of course, the person I was in March 2020, when, 2 years ago this month, when the pandemic started, to March 2022, I'm a different person. I was wiping down every single, as a longtime germaphobe, I don't know how I didn't hose everything down with soap and water. I was wiping things down with Lysol wipes, and then you couldn't, you went to the store, you couldn't find the Lysol wipes. You'd walk into a Walmart and you'd grab any crappy brand wipe, and you come home, and my wife was like, "That's not good. That's," and you'd still use it, and you'd wipe everything down. And as the months went on, and then the year passed, then a year and a half passed, my attitude towards what was happening with the virus was changing. And so I like to think I came a long way in the 2 years. And some people, the person they were in March 2020 is the same person they are today. For some people, it's worse. They didn't quite believe it in the beginning, and now they're beyond obsessed with washing their hands 30 times a day. They were never germaphobes, and now they're still wiping things down, and they're wearing a mask when they're walking alone outside. And my wife had mentioned to me that she had seen something where a doctor was saying, this is like a PTSD, a post-traumatic stress disorder. People go through all kinds of PTSD, and this is very similar. So people basically react to trauma differently. We're all different people. And for a lot of people, this particular doctor was saying, it's going to take a lot of people a long time to get back to the way things were. For some people, they'll never go back. They've accepted this new normal. But to not ridicule, to not make fun of these people, and I've done a bit of both, I'm not going to lie and sit here and say that I haven't made fun of some people wearing a mask by themselves in the middle of a golf course or some other ridiculous stuff. But what this doctor was saying is people deal with trauma in different ways. And for some people, this is going to be very difficult. Now, they lifted the mask mandates in Ontario, and I already had a couple of friends say to me that their significant others are still wearing a mask. And for the other significant other that didn't wear the mask, that she was feeling very scared, frightened to be in a grocery store without wearing a mask and seeing people not wearing masks. So she took hers out, and she doesn't have to wear one, but she did. She felt obliged to. So you've heard me, and people like me, your friends, your family, give their opinions. For some, it's ended relationships, it's ended friendships, it's ended employment, it's caused stress between people, and disagreements have led to ruined relationships and work relationships and friendships, and we know all that. But the last couple of weeks it's crazy. My mind has been going 100 miles an hour, and I've been thinking, did I do the right thing? Did I had I not given my opinion and just stayed in the gray zone, not given an opinion, and not especially as somebody who's more of a public personality because of my years in radio and broadcasting, not because I'm somebody special. A lot of people in my field chose to take a step back and not give an opinion. I thought, had I not done that, would I have been in a different place now? I'm not going to lie. I think I've said it 3 times now. I'm not going to lie 4 times. I'm not going to lie 5 times. It's been difficult to get brands to sponsor the drive-by. It's been extremely difficult. And the people that I work with and I partner with, we've had chats. These are people that I respect from the bottom of my heart. And we've had these conversations. And basically, in a nutshell, it's, Frank, if you continue going down this road, and I said, well, what is this road exactly? Is it is it a country road? Is it a highway full of cars? Is there a traffic jam? What's the road exactly that I'm going down? The road less traveled? Yes. If you continue going down this road and you don't go more mainstream, it's going to be hard to find brands to support you. However, there are brands that still will because they believe in you. They believe in what you say. They see that you have followers and people who find you credible or accept your opinions, know that you're speaking from the heart, and that matters. But as time goes by, the days go by, the weeks go by, society reopens slowly but surely. I mean, fully reopens. Some people will forget and they'll be able to move on and you'll be able to reestablish relationships with some. And I said, well, I'm not willing to change how I do things. I'm all about being honest and I'm all about being truthful to myself. At the end of the day, all of us, we go home. In this case, we've been home 24/7 during the last couple of years, but we have to face each other in the mirror, or face ourselves, each other, because, we have me, myself, and I, we have three personalities, three people. We have to face ourselves in the mirror. And then I always say it, our heads hit the pillow at night. Are you comfortable with how you conducted yourself during that day? I do that all the time. I think, I'm staring up at the ceiling and I'm thinking, and I know a lot of people do this. Maybe I overthink, and I'm like, am I okay with what I did today and what I said today? And so this was my point a couple of minutes ago when I started mentioning this, is I've been feeling down and I've been questioning and running things through my mind over and over again. Had I done this, would I be in a different position? But had I not been true to myself, would I have been would I've been in this position? And what position am I really in? And then somebody who's close to me said to me this week, Frank, you really pissed off a lot of people. And I said, well, then I gained a whole bunch of other people who respected me. And, I go, and some of the people who are pissed off have come back, and some will never come back. But I can't lie to myself. I have to be able to be truthful to the most important person, and that's not being selfish. The most important person, first and foremost, in your life is you. You take care, the song, looking out for number one. That's not to say you're selfish. I'm not a selfish person. And last week I had Chris Nyland, former Montreal Canadian, here, and he said the same thing. I'm not a selfish person. And I truly don't believe that he's a selfish person at all. And I'm not a selfish person either. I care about other people, and I always put other people before me, sometimes a little too much, and I have in my life. And therefore, I had to take a step back and said, well, where are all these people now? They're not there. They've kind of abandoned me, people like me. You may be watching now, you feel the same way. And so you got to look out for yourself because no one else will. And at the end of the day, do I feel good about what I did, what I said? Yes, I do, because I truly believe in the things I believe in. Could I have done it differently? Yes. Would I have been in a different predicament? No doubt about it. No doubt about it. If I never would have taken shots at legacy media, I'd probably get phone calls, because I was getting phone calls, mostly to go to other cities to work in my chosen profession of radio, but I was getting them. Well, that went completely, dead. Radio silence. Once I took a shot at legacy media, and gave my thoughts on how unfair I thought they were portraying certain events of the last 2 years. But for the majority of the things that I said I truly believe in, I stand my ground and continue to believe those things, and we move on. We move on out of this and into the next chapter together. And I hope more and more people see the genuineness of this podcast and the fact that I will never steer away from being genuine and sacrifice this podcast to be more mainstream or be more attractive to sponsors. I'll never do it. And I understand that some people won't want to work with me, but that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this because I want a free conversation. I believe in free speech. And if my guests come in here and they use profanity and they make some jokes and some inappropriate and they take stands and give opinions that some don't like, well, that's too bad. You always have that choice to unfollow, to turn it off, to go somewhere else. But the last couple of weeks of feeling down, I'm not going to lie, it took over my psyche, and I've been feeling down. And I'm sure a lot of people have gone through this. A lot of people have gone, through these feelings and questioned their openness and whether that got them into trouble. And it might have, but trouble to who? Trouble to people you know and love? Trouble to your true friends? Like, okay, so you pissed off a whole bunch of people and they'll probably never want to hang out with you again, but there's always a stranger this doesn't sound right, a stranger lurking somewhere who wants to start a friendship with you. Maybe not a lurking stranger. Probably not. We don't need any of those, but there's always a new friendship that can begin, right? Or an old friendship that could reset, you would think. But I wanted to get that off my chest because, I even had a couple of chats with some friends and my wife, and I was like, you think a lot of people are feeling this way? I think a lot of people are definitely feeling this way. And look, we believed a lot of things during this pandemic, and many accepted everything that the government said. They fully complied. And I've used words in the past on my Instagram lives, mind you, albeit a year and a half ago, words like sheep that I no longer use in my vocabulary because I think it's derogatory. And I think, for the people that did comply and did follow that doesn't necessarily make them sheep. I was more angry when I used those words a couple of times. It wasn't many times, but again, I don't apologize for using them, but I've progressed to not using those words because I don't want to keep causing the divide. I want us to come together. And so, look, some people believe the greater good was responsible for pushing aside logic, like what happened to logic. I believe that. And people believe the entire narrative, as I said. And that's fine. If you're okay with that, as I said, you have to look at yourself in the mirror at night and you're okay with that, that's fine. When I look at myself in the mirror, I'm okay with my decisions and my experiences and how I conducted myself in the last 2 years. I don't lose any sleep except for the last couple of weeks of questioning myself and why I did and said what I did. I needed to almost, be the judge and jury to myself and realize, and come to that understanding and realize I did this for a reason, not for selfish reasons, but for my reasons. And so, having said all this, in the last couple of weeks, as society has started to reopen, and I see, where the Montreal Canadiens here play in Montreal, a Bell Center full of people, 21,000 fans. And you go on Instagram and everybody's stories, and, it breaks your heart because you see people partying, and people are back at weddings, and they're celebrating, and the house parties, and they're holding up the booze, and friends are laughing and smiling, and the masks are slowly starting to come off. And you're watching this, and you feel for other humans, and you're like, oh, this person's having a great time. This person is feeling joy because we've been closed up for 2 years, and you can't help not feel appreciation and love for that person in that story, and seeing them enjoy themselves and getting their lives back, and you go, well, that's nice. But then a certain part of you, the logical part, I see a Bell Center full of people. I see a Bell Center full of people watching comedians Sebastian Maniscalco. I see people at weddings, people partying, people, within 2 weeks, it all opened up. And people have moved on. And that's great. But I can't be the only one thinking, that's it. That's it. Thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people in an arena watching a comedian partying next to each other. That's it. It's over. It's over. Like you're looking and going, is it coming back? Is this virus coming back? Is the next wave coming back? Is the next set of restrictions and mandates, even though we still have several big ones here across the country, interprovincially, unvaccinated people still can't travel. Unvaccinated people still can't cross the border. That's besides the point. But you start looking and wondering, is this it? Are we home free? And then I start thinking, wow, people, what are they, have they just put it out of their minds? And then you heard people like, Frank, it was great to be out watching a comedy show and Sebastian Maniscalco and feeling free again. And what am I going to do? Be the party pooper and say, but didn't you question all those people around you not wearing masks? Like within weeks, we went from an emergency to no emergency, and just like that. And, some of the top doctors disappearing from television. How did the narrative change so quick? That's how my mind works. And I'm sure there are a hell of a lot of people like me who think the same way, going, wow, hang on a sec. What? Monica and Chandler? Who? Monica and Chandler? What's her name? COVID. COVID disguised as Chandler. What? If you don't watch the first half of this podcast, you have no idea what I'm talking about now. But I just can't let it go. There's a part of me going, what? That's it. People have, you don't want to say people fell for it, and now, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, that's it. We just went back, and that's it. It just, the next chapter, just like that. It just didn't feel to me like it was a progression to everything opening up. It was almost instant, I felt. To some people, I guess, they just move on, and they could close that chapter and just head to the next one. For me, I have to understand the last chapter and say, how do we get from chapter 2 here to chapter 3 so quickly? There has to be some flow. It's so choppy anyway. So on top of everything that I've been feeling the last couple of weeks, as I started mentioning this, feeling a little down, when this started to happen, I started to feel a bit more down because I was like, wow, people have moved on so quickly. And so, like, no questions asked. And then I go on my Instagram and I see some of the people still asking the same questions because obviously they feel and think like I do. Not that we're better than you. No one's better than the other person. But we're all different people. And I start seeing people post certain things. And I'm like, okay, I'm not the only one thinking this. And then there's the Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, whatever you want to call it, coalition, gathering together of the minds. Someone posted this a couple of hours ago, I saw this post. Someone wrote, "Our democracy is a complete illusion." It is. There's no democracy here. Because I'm curious to know this. First of all, before I tell you what I'm curious to know, conservatives say that it's a coalition. Okay, let's be balanced here. I'll give both sides of the story. Conservatives say it's a coalition because the liberals are in bed with the NDP. Period. They're joining forces to keep the liberals in power until 2025. There's a couple of bills that are coming and going to be heard, and those are going to go through if you have NDP support. Liberals say it's about coming together so that the liberals, yes, can stay around, but while maybe pushing some NDP-friendly, deals at the same time, make them happy, make the liberals happy, and then having majority decisions, because the Trudeau government only has a minority government, over the conservatives, and keeping the conservatives away from power, because that's what the left wants. They don't want the conservatives, the conservatives think the left are crazy. The left think the conservatives are crazy. I mean, it's just we've been so polarized, more than ever here in Canada. You think America's polarized? Other places on the planet? I've never seen anything like it. I'm sure you haven't either. Complete division, more than ever, caused by, of course, our leaders and people in government. But so technically, I had to look at it myself and say, okay, well, is it a coalition? Well, I remember studying Canadian history. I had a minor in history in university, whatever that means. I loved history, studied American history, bit of Middle East history, Quebec history, Canadian history, all mixed together. That was my minor. And I remember that one of the last coalitions Canada has, true coalitions, was like right before the Spanish flu. Don't mention the Spanish flu. 1917, I think it was right before. That was the last coalition. But what is a coalition? Well, it's when two parties come together, but they come together to form a government, okay, which is technically not what this is. The NDP and the Liberals are coming together, but they're not forming a government together. But they're coming together to work together, right? So that they can pass certain things, make deals with each other, and keep the Conservatives away from power, considering the Conservatives have had popular poll numbers recently. They don't want the Conservatives getting in, especially after what's happened in the last couple of months. Liberals not as popular. God forbid the Conservatives and somebody else take over. They don't want that. So how do you manipulate it? You manipulate it by joining forces. So technically, not a coalition, but indirectly, it's a coalition. I mean, call it what you want, but they've come together to form the Liberal NDP. A Liberal NDP. That's the Liberal NDP party together. Now, here's my question, which I started this segment of the podcast with. Here's what I want to know. If you're a card-carrying member, and I mean somebody completely loyal and devoted to the NDP, and you see your leader make a deal with, because the people who are hardcore NDPers, they can't stand Trudeau, okay? It's not like they're left and they're okay with Trudeau. No. You ask NDPers in BC, true NDPers, which, by the way, in British Columbia, in the West, Conservatives got the highest in the last election where Trudeau won the minority. In BC, which is heavy NDP, Conservatives won the highest share of the vote, followed by the NDP, followed by the Liberals, okay? Liberals were third. So you tell somebody from BC who's a card-carrying member of the NDP party that how they feel. Ask them how they feel that the NDP is in bed with the Liberals. They don't like it. And at the same time, if you're a true Liberal, and I'm talking true Liberal, I'm talking days of Jean Chrétien, not Justin Trudeau Liberal. If you're a true Liberal and you're looking at, I'm talking about liberals from 20 years ago, okay? Not what the Liberal Party's become now. The Liberal Party, true people in the Liberal Party, true liberals, they don't want to be with the NDP. The NDP is not what they represent at all. So there's got to be, there's got to be people inside on both sides not liking this at all. So then I start to think, well, this has to be good. And then I read an article in the National Post aligned with my thoughts. This has to be good for the Conservatives because it's going to piss off people on the left of left and then on the right of left, right? Which means true NDPers going to hate this about Singh. True liberals are going to hate this about Trudeau. It'll cause some dissension within the party. God forbid for both of them, things go really bad. By 2025, everybody will be sick of these two parties. The Conservatives are going to win anyway. But it seems like a long way away. 2025 is like 3 years away. You woke up this morning and you're not a fan of Trudeau or Singh, and you see this, and then you see Trudeau confirm it and come out. You're shaking your head, you're face palming, going, "What is going on?" People are freaking out. And you should be a little freaked out. But at the same time, you always hope with every mistake they make, and we still don't know whether this is a mistake or if this is going to work in their favor. It might just work in their favor. With every mistake, maybe misstep might be a better move for the party you think represents or should be, or represents you and your values and the party you'd like to see in charge eventually. But I just find it nuts. And then if you look at popular vote, the conservative, people always say in the United States, yeah, but Biden got more of the popular vote than Trump. Therefore, there's more. Okay, well, based on that, let's do that in Canada. Conservatives got 5.7 million of the popular vote, people who voted for them. 5.5 million came from the Liberals, and about 3 million came from the NDP. Now, we do have a parliamentary system. We do have to follow the rules and our system, and that's a parliamentary system. So that means even when you have a minority of the populist vote, that's going to happen, right? You might only have a certain percentage that gives you a minority government, but you're still going to rule. That's part of the parliamentary system. That wouldn't happen in the United States, but we have to live with it. And I'm okay with it because I'm all about democracy and fair voting. And as long as the voting was fair, which I still like to think is somewhat fair, then whoever wins. But I don't think it's fair when the NDP and the Liberals are in cahoots, and because if that continues for a lifetime, well, Conservatives will never win again. Just the numbers won't allow it. So that's the scary part. And then you start to think, why is Trudeau doing this? Because I always say it, he's power hungry. This is somebody who is so loving and has to put his stamp on. He's put his stamp on Canada, all right. I think he's sending Canada down the drain more than anyone has ever sent Canada. I mean, we're talking bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Further, like the Titanic is here, and this is Canada. That's where Canada's going. And so this is a guy who thinks, okay, well, I'm not done yet. I'm just going to keep, he keeps putting his stamp on everything. And in my opinion, ruining everything he puts a stamp on. It's just getting worse and worse. And he's so infatuated by power that he's not willing to give it up, and he's willing to do everything to hang on to that power. Anything, and he just did. He made a deal. The two devils made a deal with each other, and I can't be the only person that's completely mind-boggled by this. I waking up this morning, I was like, oh man, this is insanity. But I digress. This has been in the news a lot. Leah Thomas, the transgendered athlete that picked up, how many? I lost track. 5 gold medals. in the women's swimming NCAA competition in the last week and a half. I want to start by saying I am not transphobic. I am, and I hate the fact I have to say this. I'm not even going to say it. Obviously, I'm not transphobic. And obviously, I have nothing derogatory to say about people who feel that they identify with one sex, one gender more than the other. But this is not about that for me anymore, because when you see, on the podium, you see Thomas next to the second place and third place finisher. And obviously, look, she might identify as a woman. I get it, 100%. I'm not this guy, of course, because I'm a fan of Caitlyn Jenner's. I really am. If you watch the Caitlyn Jenner documentary, and the fact you remember when Caitlyn Jenner was part of the Montreal Olympic Games in 1976, whether you were alive or not, I was a kid, I don't even remember it, but looking at that documentary, you see her fight and struggle to associate, with the pain of trying to understand who he or she really is, in this case, who she really is, and how it took her so long to become Caitlyn Jenner. And then when she finally did, she's comfortable in that body and who she is now. I completely and utterly respect her, but Caitlyn Jenner is the first person coming out now and saying, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Women's sports will never be the same again because physically, someone like Leah Thomas, built like a man. It doesn't matter if she identifies as a woman. She has the body of a man. Therefore, in men's competition, she was 460. Let's just drop some numbers here. In men's competition, she was 462nd. And then in the women's NCAA, one of the events, I don't know which one's this particular one I was watching, first. So with men, 462. With women, first place. It's like when Dave Chappelle, in his documentary, in his Netflix special, said, can you imagine LeBron James comes out and says, I identify as a woman now. And he goes and play in the WNBA as LeBron or LeBrona James, whatever. And I'm okay with that. If he feels like he's a woman and he wants to do that. But will anyone in the WNBA ever have a chance again next to LeBron James? Zero chance. Why? Because LeBron James' anatomy, when it comes to his anatomy, physically, he's a man, even though he's a woman in his mind, and he identifies in his body and everything. He's full woman. But it's not fair. It's not fair because if people start doing this, whether for the right intentions, and eventually somebody's going to start doing this for the wrong intentions, and it's going to be somebody who doesn't even identify as the other sex, and they're going to say, oh, I'm just going to go compete. Well, I'm a good swimmer, but I'd probably win gold if I were a woman. Okay, I'm a woman. I'm not saying that this is necessarily going to happen, but I'm sure a couple of people have thought about it. These are the very selfish people in the world that are not even transgendered, and there's, what, I'm going to F around here, and I'm going to go see if I could compete. And now you're going to have everybody and their uncle, or their aunt, in this case, switching to go and try this. And you call me crazy now, watch. We are doomed as a society if this continues to happen. And again, this has nothing to do with, in my opinion, transgendered people have rights. Of course they have, but maybe it's a different category where transgendered people compete against other transgendered people. I'm okay with that. And I'm sure someone's watching this is gonna be offended. And I made it very clear that I don't need to say anything else. Be offended, but this is nutty. The road we're going down is it's an 18-wheeler. No, it's 100 18-wheelers that have crashed, and there's nuts all over. Walnuts, cashews, almonds, all over the highway. You can't, they need to plow it through like a bad snowstorm. This is how nuts it is. It's out of control. And then you go, fill up your gas tank. I fill up my gas tank on the weekend, and I don't know, I imagine wherever you are watching this podcast from, gas prices just as high. In some places, a little better than others. But here in the province of Quebec, I filled up my vehicle over the weekend. I swear, and I thought, no, this can't be. I hadn't filled it up in a while because I really don't go anywhere. I never leave the house. I have no life. And half a tank, it was slightly over half a tank. $73. 2 years ago at the start of the pandemic, I filled up the same car for $60, filled up. Now, $73 for half a tank. I'm sure people are having heart attacks every time they fill up their tank. And well, that's why a lot of people are going electric, and a lot of people are finding other means to get around, and everything is going up. Everything has gone up. Go to a grocery store, you feel the same way. It's hit our pockets. It's out of control. But is it, and then they say, I start reading articles. I want to really find out what's going on here. Is it really because Russia invaded the Ukraine and there's a war going on? Because we never got much of our oil from Russia anyway. So what is it? I'm convinced they're gouging us. They're gouging us. And I'm willing to bet it's going to be a record year for oil companies. The profits are going to go through the roof. And I don't believe it's as high as it is. But I guess, the bottom line is, even if we don't get our oil from Russia, for the countries that did do business with Russia, if they're now not doing business with Russia, and these countries are now, bidding and buying oil from the same places all countries like Canada, United States, countries, other democratic countries are buying their oil from, other nations, democratic or not, that, of course, there's more competition, the prices go up. There's more demand, so the prices go up. But something doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right to me. There's a lot of things that don't feel right. I'm not saying I feel for the people of the Ukraine. My heart's with them. Seeing the scenes breaks my heart, like it breaks everybody's heart seeing those scenes. We don't want war. Nobody wants war. But something doesn't feel right. I can't explain it, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not about to go through my list of things why I don't think, because I think I have over the course, I have to clear my throat. Let me clear my throat. And that one about that. I don't know. It's just something it doesn't feel right to me, and I can't quite pinpoint it, and I'm sure other people have thought the same way. You're just trying to put it all together, but it's not a mathematical equation, but you keep getting the wrong answer, regardless of whether you have the perfect math to get you that answer. It's something just doesn't feel right to me. Hope you enjoy this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, comments are important, right? Whether you agree, disagree, I don't care. Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, Podbean, wherever you are, you have the stars. Rate it. Leave a comment. And I thank you so much for listening and watching to episode 13 of The Drive-By. Catch you again next week. Bye-bye.
This is The Drive-By with Freeway Frank.
Watch all episodes of The Drive-By on YouTube. Listen in on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, Podbean, and tune in.